D-Day. Day 0, Good Friday, April 13, 2029. Apophis served its name, God of Chaos, well. The power of its erratic path, at 3.7 meters per second, combined with the gravitational pull of both Earth and Moon, tore its 20 million tons of mountainous rock in two. True to its erratic movement, the two parts split and then banged together again, smashing into each other, so near and forceful that those foolish or brave enough to watch, saw it. The larger part, 180 meters in diameter, stayed intact, shedding only a few stones that would become a meteor shower. The slightly smaller half shattered during the collision, creating many parts that would become massive meteor showers. More dangerously, it slung 5 large bits on new paths that nobody could have predicted. A building-sized 50-meter-long shard of the very hard space rock was first to hit the Earth, veering off toward the coast of Malaysia, hitting the sea close to North Sumatra. A plume of smoke grew above the massive tsunami speeding away from the explosion, equivalent to 200 million tons of TNT. The tectonic fault line known as the Ring of Fire, rumbled. The acting Prime Minister of India issued an angry statement about how they've been kept in the dark, and how their requests to help deter the asteroid were ignored, as if India mattered less than the USA. Then she disappeared into a bunker despite coastal evacuations being incomplete. Tsunamis hit the coast of most Indian Ocean nations. The government of the USA stayed quiet. Somewhere unimportant, a family of 4 in their ordinary suburban home high above sea level, were lying awake until their wake-up alarms went off. Then they sent each other more messages on WhatsApp, which still worked despite a crumbling system. They had their final talk last night, but still shared some encouragement. Then they dressed in bathing suits and went to submerge in the baths of water waiting for them, breathing straws ready, in case the worst happened. In each of the 3 bathrooms, their survival kits were laid out and ready. The waiting began. The main event, the resilient half of Apophis, impacted the Earth next. As secretly predicted by world players, who had decided it was less of a risk than trying to launch nuclear bombs at the asteroid, the impact was in Iran, though a few hundred miles further west and north than expected. This explosion, like 500 million tons of TNT, was not an extinction-level event on its own, but nonetheless tragic. The thud was felt as far as Africa and China, and blew open a crater of almost 4 miles across. It kicked trillions of bits of ejecta into the atmosphere, some of which began to drift away, but all eventually fell back to Earth. From that height, each of the trillions of falling particles, pebbles and dust, eventually sped up to terminal velocity and burst into flame. First the greatest shockwave in the history of mankind, and then a gigantic firestorm, circled out around the blast site. It ignited the air around it. The Earth was in danger of becoming a huge combustion chamber, an inferno that would obliterate life. The elites were arguably safe in their bunkers, but most of mankind were unprepared, at best had some emergency supplies, at worst were stuck on a highway or close to an ocean. One little family lay submerged due to Ian's anxieties, but would it be enough? but the ejecta of this collision was not enough to reach full combustion. As the circle of fire reached 1,000 miles from impact, it spluttered and turned into isolated firestorms. With the last monsoon season a failure and the region parched, the worst part of the wall of fire lasted well into Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, and northern India, adding to the harm of the tsunami in the south. This, combined with a fast rise in global temperature and various other blasts and meteor showers, turned into localized fires and burning ash eventually reaching the furthest corners of the earth. Areas that had just been swamped with rain, in cases like southern Africa, northern Europe, and South America abnormally so, and ironically areas hit by tsunamis, cooled down faster creating large areas that did not catch fire. Smoldering ash and debris would eventually reach everywhere though, in combination with subsequent events. There was no current news on the internet, even where it spluttered to life for a moment or two. Ian and his family relied on their planning and research, to decide how long to wait and what to do next. Apophis was even more chaotic than they had feared though. More or less at the same time as the impact in Iran, a 25-meter-sized piece of rock that was kicked out when Apophis collided with itself, landed within sight of the beach a few miles northeast of Dar es Salaam. A smaller but widespread tsunami sped at the east coast of Africa and the Indian Ocean islands. The impact was felt like a distant earthquake throughout Africa, and volcanic activity thought dormant, rumbled in the Great Rift Valley. Falling ejecta from this 2-mile-wide crater added to the fire in the sky spreading from Iran. Areas of extreme drought and heat at the time like Somalia, Sudan, Chad, Tunisia, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Dubai, and Syria went up in flames. Recently flooded areas of the Nile Valley and Israel broke the threatening circle of fire up again, turning it into local firestorms. Apophis still failed to deliver an extinction-level event because it was simply not large enough. Mankind would deliver much of the apocalypse on itself, the god of chaos just helped. The remaining 3 main chunks of Apophis landed in a line stretching west-northwest from the main site in Iran. Rocks ejected by the larger half of the asteroid rained down on southern Europe in a meteor shower. Because Apophis consisted of surprisingly dense rock and metal, even some pebble-sized bits did not burn out before hitting the ground, every bit of it became missiles raining down on the Earth, causing more localized fires and small explosions. The spate of meteor showers lighting up the sky, looked like the asteroid had dragged stars down with it. A large chunk, 40 meters in diameter, crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. It sent a massive plume of smoke, debris, and vapor into the atmosphere, adding to the rain of fire and smoke turning the sky red. A major tsunami raced in both directions hitting parts of Portugal and the Atlantic Islands, and drowning New York and the east coast of the North America as far south as North Carolina. A major meteor shower began to rain down on Northern California and adjacent dry areas, where forest fires mysteriously already burned. In Australia too, bushfires also already raged out of control before Apophis even arrived. Again, the raging firestorms were not big enough to ignite into a global wall of fire. Very wet and cool areas in the Midlands of the USA interrupted the spread of fire. FEMA was already active, and did what they could, in some of these areas due to fire disaster declarations and, in New York due to a preemptive tsunami disaster declaration, but at federal level the government of the USA stayed eerily silent at this hour. A smaller piece, not large enough to survive, forcefully exploded just before hitting the northern Pacific Ocean. The shock wave was felt as far as Australia, and 20-feet-high tsunamis sped toward California, Hawaii, Alaska, Japan, and the area where the borders of China, Russia and North Korea met. Again, the Pacific Ring of Fire rumbled. Finally, a huge sixth element of Apophis slammed into eastern Siberia with unprecedented force, causing tremors to spread southward through China and Japan toward the Ring of Fire fault line. The blast blew a crater of several miles wide into the earth and hurled tons of smoke and ejecta into the atmosphere, starting a smaller rain of fire once again over isolated areas. In North Korea, suffering from long-term drought and famine, fires spread fastest. Several moderate earthquakes and aftershocks shook Los Angeles and San Francisco. On the other side of the northern Pacific, 6 volcanoes erupted along the Ring of Fire. 5 of them merely had small lava flows and rumbling, but the 6th, Krakatoa, erupted violently, spewing more ash and dust into the atmosphere. Not quite as big as its famous eruptions, but, combined with what Apophis had done, it added to a thick layer of smoke and dust, turning the sky red far and wide. The god of chaos had landed and mankind would do the rest of his work. Where were the governments appointed and funded to protect and help? It was as if Earth and its dominant species, mankind, waited breathlessly while the Apophis, god of chaos, drowned the world and all its fauna and flora in destruction and despair. At some point it would stop mattering which country in the world you are in, the global village and the privileges it centered around technological access, disappeared with the internet and reliable electricity. Many survivors everywhere were in the same boat unwittingly because long-distance communication had collapsed. In this boat what mattered was your medical condition, the damage to local infrastructure and environment, and your ability to adapt and to find important resources. Therefore this journal describes one anonymous family, which could be you. At the pre-agreed time Ian, Sheila, Marius, and Biff emerged from their baths unscathed. Finding their phones and electricity completely dead, the others could at first not reach Biff, who did not have a two-way radio unit with him. A big worry was a large explosion, that had sounded as near as their own yard, when the heat, noise, and tremors were at its worst. At first glance everything seemed all right. Without moving from their bathrooms they tried the two-way radio and spoke to Marius. He had a view of the backyard and said, "I am fine, but sorry Dad, your car, the one for which we had no carport, caught fire and exploded. Something must have fallen on it because there were no flames inside, just a wave of heat and noise. Was there radiation in that too?" The tops of the trees they could see, did not look well. The three of them decided the time had come, as planned, to come together in the corridor and set about implementing their plans. First priority was to go to the garden flat and check on Biff. With the other two keeping lookout, Marius put on their only full-function gas mask and their master keys, to unlock a path to Biff and fetch him. His expertise on astrophysics was crucial. The apocalypse had arrived to an unknown extent, and they'd face it together, the four of them, as planned. Though historical calendar calculations were debatable, some say this Good Friday was exactly 2,000 years since the crucifixion, and today certainly looked historically key enough for that. The Apophis asteroid apocalypse, and its aftermath, will be continued in episode 8. Due to a dispute with Rumble, the omnibus containing all episodes will only be on YouTube at the link provided below. Please subscribe on YouTube to Apophis Uncanrady channel. The short version of single episodes will be published everywhere, even on Rumble Video.
Asteroid Apophis. Asteroid Apophis. Asteroid Apophis.